Hey guys, tonight we drift back into the streets of Harlem, back when the sidewalks hummed with chatter, store gates rattled open at dawn, and every corner seemed to hold its own story. The air carried the smell of fried chicken from a busy takeout spot, mixed with the faint sweetness of incense drifting from a storefront church. Kids raced on cracked pavement while the elders sat on folding chairs, trading old tales under the shade of fire escapes. Somewhere in that mosaic of sound and scent, a boy named Chiles learned to read the rhythms of his block, not from books, but from the way people moved, how they spoke, and what they didn't say. You probably won't survive this world, not the way it really was, but it's worth walking through tonight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Kevin is born into Harlem at a time when the neighborhood is a patchwork of resilience and risk. His earliest memories are of his mother's laughter in a small apartment, the clink of dishes drying on a rack, and the low rumble of traffic outside the window. His father's presence is less consistent, sometimes there, sometimes just a voice on the phone, but his mother's discipline is steady. She believes in keeping her son clean, well-dressed, and respectful, even when money is thin. Kevin notices early that clothes can change the way people treat you. A pressed shirt, polished shoes. They give a boy in Harlem a kind of armor. By the time he's old enough to play on the block alone, he's already studying people. The man who runs the corner bodega has a smile for everyone, but keeps one eye on the door. The old jazz musician upstairs talks about Duke Ellington like he was a neighbor, not a legend. The teenagers leaning on the lampposts wear gold chains and carry themselves like they own the night. It's not all charm. Kevin sees the way some kids fade from the block, swallowed by trouble. He hears his mother on the phone, her voice tight when she says someone got caught up. At church on Sundays, there's talk of staying on the right path, but Kevin notices how many men in pressed suits keep their voices low, avoiding the preacher's eye. School is fine. Kevin does well enough, but it's the streets that teach him what sticks. He learns that in Harlem, words matter, but timing matters more. He learns that a nod can mean trust or warning, depending on who gives it. And he learns that no one survives here by accident. One winter afternoon, Kevin walks home past a dice game on the sidewalk. The men are laughing, cursing softly, bills fanning out on the cracked concrete. One of them, a tall man in a camel overcoat, catches Kevin watching. The man grins, flicks a quarter his way, and says, "Always know the odds, kid." Kevin pockets the coin, not yet knowing that the lesson is more than about dice. It's about life in Harlem. The city is shifting, though. New money is starting to trickle into Uptown, but so is new danger. Kevin feels it like a low vibration under his feet, something coming that he can't yet name. But for now, he's just a boy with sharp eyes, a steady walk, and a growing sense that his story will not be small. Kevin moves through the school corridors with the same quiet awareness he carries on the street. Hallways echo with locker doors slamming and sneakers squeaking over polished tile. Teachers pass him with nods. They know him as a polite kid, one who rarely causes trouble. But Kevin's mind often drifts beyond the brick walls and fluorescent lights. He's thinking about the way the world works outside, where timing, reputation, and connections seem to matter far more than grades and report cards. By middle school, Kevin understands that not every student is there to learn algebra or memorize state capitals. Some are there because their parents make them be, some to stay off the radar of social workers, and a few, like Kevin, because they're biding their time until something bigger calls. He starts to notice which classmates have older brothers with cars, gold watches, and pockets full of folded bills. These kids talk in whispers about weekend runs and names that don't appear in the school directory. He's drawn to ambition, even when it walks a risky line. One classmate in particular, Reggie, becomes a kind of mirror for what Kevin could be. Reggie's smart, quick with words, and carries himself like someone already negotiating deals. They talk at lunch about clothes, music, and how money changes the way people listen to you. Reggie brags about a cousin who sells high-end sneakers out of the trunk of his car, making more in a weekend than most teachers do in a week. Kevin's not blind to the hazards. He's seen what happens when someone gets greedy or careless, but he also sees how respect comes quicker to those who dress sharp, speak well, and know how to make things happen. A crisp shirt and well-placed confidence can open doors that remain locked to others. One spring afternoon, during a school assembly, Kevin finds himself seated behind a group of older boys who are clearly more interested in planning their evening than listening to the principal. He overhears talk of making a move and splitting the take. There's no direct invitation for him, but Kevin catches the way one of them glances back, measuring him with a quick scan. That look plants something, an idea that maybe, when the time comes, he'll be ready to step through whatever door opens. Even teachers can't entirely hide their awareness of what's happening beyond the school gates. A social studies instructor mentions the economic undercurrents of Harlem during a lecture, casting a glance toward the back row where a few notorious last names sit. Kevin hears the coded language in that. There's the official version of the city, and then there's the real one. After school, Kevin walks home past storefronts that are slowly changing. Old barbershops get replaced by record stores replaced by boutiques. He sees men in double-breasted suits talking in doorways, women stepping out of cabs in dresses that shimmer under streetlights. The city's pulse is quickening, and Kevin feels his own heart sink with it. One day, Reggie tells him, "Man, you got the look already. All you need is the right lane." Kevin laughs it off, but later that night, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he wonders if maybe Reggie's right. The hallway chatter, the glances, the little exchanges, it's all a kind of prelude. Harlem's streets aren't waiting for him. They're moving whether he's ready or not. But in those school corridors, between the ringing of the bells and the slow shuffle to the next class, Kevin is learning the rhythms he'll need to step into the bigger game. At home, Kevin lives in the space between expectation and reality. His mother wants him to keep his head down, graduate, and build a life that doesn't depend on the street. She works long shifts, sometimes coming home with the kind of tired in her eyes that no sleep can fix. She checks his homework, asks about his day, and keeps a quiet watch on the friends he chooses. But the pull of the block is constant. Outside the apartment windows, Harlem speaks in a language Kevin can't ignore. Engines idling late at night, the faint bass line from passing cars, the sudden laughter of friends hanging under a streetlight. Those sounds feel alive, a reminder that something is always happening, even when you're standing still. Family gatherings tell a different story. At birthday parties or Sunday dinners, uncles and cousins talk about the old days, back when opportunities were scarce and people made their own lanes. Some of them did it through hard, honest work. others through routes they never describe in detail. Kevin listens closely, reading between the lines. He notices who wears the better watch, who gets the longest handshake, who sits back and lets others come to them. One evening, his mother's voice sharpens over the phone. She's talking to an older relative, mentioning a cousin who's in over his head. Kevin catches fragments: money, bad crowd, police, and sees the way she glances at him while she talks. It's a warning without being a lecture. She doesn't need to spell it out. Still, the pressures from both sides build. His peers talk about making quick money. His family warns him to avoid the traps. It's a tug of war Kevin plays quietly, never committing too far in either direction. He's careful about what he says, who he's seen with, and where he spends his time. The tipping point comes in small moments, like the night his mother hands him a freshly ironed shirt before school and says, "You're my pride, Kevin. Don't let anybody cheapen you." Or the afternoon his cousin Jerome rolls up in a car with leather seats, gold accents on the dashboard, and a smile that says, "Life is good." For now, Kevin sees the divide, the slow grind of safe choices and the quick burn of risky ones. He's still young enough to believe he can take a little from both worlds without losing himself, but Harlem has its own gravity. Family love might keep him grounded, but the street's pull is strong, and every day it's getting harder to stand in the middle without leaning one way. On the block, Kevin starts to notice the men who seem to carry Harlem's unwritten authority. They aren't the loudest, but when they speak, the noise around them softens. These are the street corner mentors, older figures who've survived enough to know the rules, but smart enough not to flaunt every move. One of them, a man known only as Mr. Eddie, holds court outside a smoke shop most afternoons. He's always in a neatly pressed suit, hat angled just right, and a cane that seems more style than necessity. Mr. Eddie never calls Kevin over, but the boy catches the occasional nod, a subtle acknowledgement that he's being watched. In a good way, Kevin learns more from observation than conversation. He sees how Mr. Eddie listens more than he talks, how he never stays too long in one spot, how people greet him with both respect and caution. Sometimes, an argument will flare between two younger men, voices rising, gestures sharp. Mr. Eddie will step in, say something too low for Kevin to hear, and just like that, the tension dissolves. There are others too. Big Ray, who runs the corner dice games but never plays them himself. Lena, who owns the hair salon yet somehow knows which shipments are arriving at the loading docks before the truck drivers do. Each of them carries a certain presence, a balance of openness and guardedness that keeps them rooted in the community without being consumed by it. Kevin starts hanging near these spots more often, careful not to intrude. He buys a soda at the smoke shop, lingers outside the salon to talk to one of Lena's nephews, or offers to run a small errand for Big Ray. None of it feels like much at first, but slowly he's drawn into their orbit. One Saturday afternoon, Mr. Eddie catches Kevin watching a conversation between two men in long coats. Without looking up from his cigarette, he says, "The street will show you everything, but it won't explain a thing. You gotta figure that part out yourself." Kevin nods, not sure if he's meant to respond. The advice hangs there, half riddle, half truth. These mentors aren't saints. Kevin knows some of their dealings skirt the law, but he also sees their value as keepers of order in a place where order doesn't come easy. They move like chess players, never rushing, always thinking 2 steps ahead. For a young man trying to understand how to exist in Harlem without getting swallowed by it, their example is as much a warning as it is an invitation. And Kevin, quietly, begins to decide which lessons to keep and which ones to leave behind. Kevin's first small hustles don't arrive with fanfare. They start as favors, running an envelope across the block, picking up a package from a bus station locker, delivering a message to someone 2 streets over. At first, it feels harmless, even helpful. The older guys call him reliable, a word that carries weight in a place where trust is currency. The money is small at the beginning. Bills folded neatly into his palm with a quiet, "good work" attached. Enough to buy new sneakers without asking his mother, or to take a girl to the movies without checking what's left in his wallet. But more than the cash, it's the recognition that sticks with him. People begin to greet him differently. The shop owner across the street asks if he's handling business. One of the older dice game regulars starts saving him a spot on the curb. Kevin learns quickly that timing is everything. Deliver something too fast, and people wonder if you checked it. Too slow, and they think you lingered somewhere you shouldn't have. He develops a rhythm. Steady, calm, unhurried. Never looking over his shoulder, never looking like he's got something worth taking. There are risks, of course. One rainy afternoon, a man Kevin doesn't recognize stops him on the corner, asking too many questions about where he's headed. Kevin sidesteps with a shrug, saying he's late to meet his cousin, and keeps walking. Later, Big Ray tells him, "Good instinct. Curiosity is dangerous in this business." Both ways, the scale of his errands begins to grow. He's not just moving envelopes now. Sometimes it's a paper bag, sometimes a shoebox taped shut. He never opens them, never asks. In Harlem, some answers are more trouble than the questions. It's during one of these runs that Kevin starts thinking about how every person in the neighborhood seems connected in ways outsiders could never map. A handoff on 145th might be linked to a card game in the Bronx, which might be tied to a shipment at the docks. The network is invisible unless you know where to look, and Kevin is slowly being shown the lines. When the first real profit comes, a thick roll of bills for a week's worth of work, Kevin counts it twice under the dim bulb in his room. It's not life-changing money, but it's enough to taste the possibility. Enough to make him wonder how far he could go if he stepped fully into the current instead of just dipping a hand in. For now, though, he plays it cool. No flashy purchases, no sudden change in his routine. Just a little extra confidence in his step and a growing awareness that this path, once you start walking it, is harder to leave than it is to enter. Kevin starts to realize that in Harlem, style is more than fabric and thread. It's a language, a well-cut suit, a crisp collar, the right pair of shades on a sunny day. These things say you belong, that you understand the codes without having to speak them aloud. And for Kevin, who's always had an eye for detail, style becomes both shield and statement. He watches the older men closely. Mr. Eddie's camel overcoat, Big Ray's perfectly shined shoes, even Lena, with her gold bangles that chime softly when she moves, knows that presentation commands attention. Kevin sees how a polished look can disarm suspicion, how people treat you differently when you appear to have purpose and success stitched into your clothes. With his first earnings, he upgrades quietly. A tailored jacket from a consignment shop that still smells faintly of cedar. A pair of leather loafers he buffs himself every other night. A silk tie, even though he rarely has occasion to wear it, because it makes him feel ready for any room he might walk into. One Saturday, he spots a pair of Italian slacks in a boutique window. They're more expensive than anything he's bought before, but when he tries them on, the fit is perfect. The shop owner, an older man with silver hair, says, "Son, these aren't just pants. They're a passport." Kevin buys them. not because he needs them, but because he understands what the man means. The transformation doesn't go unnoticed. Reggie jokes that Kevin's gonna end up in GQ before he ends up in jail, and while it's said with a grin, there's truth underneath. At a block party, a woman Kevin's never met asks him if he's one of those uptown investors, and he just smiles, letting the question hang. Even his interactions on the street change. Police officers glance at him, but rarely stop him. Older hustlers nod with quiet respect. Shopkeepers start greeting him by name. He's no longer just Kevin the errand runner. He's becoming Kevin the gentleman, someone who moves, like he belongs to a higher tier of the game. Of course, style can't stop a bullet or erase a bad decision. Kevin knows that looking the part is only one layer of survival, but it's a layer he wears well, and in a city where first impressions can open doors or slam them shut, it's a tool he's not about to give up. Kevin's first real connections come not from flashy moves, but from being in the right place, saying the right thing, and knowing when to stay quiet. Harlem is a web of introductions, and every thread is tested before it's tied. It happens one evening outside a dimly lit jazz lounge on Lenox Avenue. Kevin's there to drop off a package for Big Ray, but he lingers on the sidewalk afterward, listening to the muffled trumpet drifting through the door. A man steps outside, mid-40s, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Kevin's monthly rent. He lights a cigarette and gives Kevin a slow, assessing look. "You're Chiles, right? Ray says you're reliable." The voice is even, but it's the kind that expects truth in every answer. Kevin nods once. No bragging, no extra words. The man hands him a card with nothing but a phone number on it. "If you're ever interested in steadier work, call me." He doesn't call right away. Instead, he asks around discreetly. The man's name is Victor, and he's known for two things: never missing a payment and never forgiving a betrayal. Kevin decides that's the kind of person you want to be on good terms with. Through Victor, Kevin meets others. A soft-spoken supplier from Queens who wears wire-rim glasses. A logistics man who somehow knows every freight schedule between New York and Newark. And a woman named Carla who runs an uptown boutique, but has an uncanny awareness of who's moving what in and out of the city. Each introduction is a test. Victor invites Kevin to a backroom card game, not to play, but to watch. The players glance at him between hands, gauging his composure. No questions about the stakes, no lingering on the money. Just a steady presence, like he belongs there. One night, Carla asks him to escort her to a gallery opening. Kevin wears his best suit, says little, and makes sure she's never left alone in a room. Later, she tells Victor, he's got manners, and in this business, that's rarer than loyalty. These early connections aren't about big scores or fast money. They're about building a foundation. Kevin learns that in Harlem's upper tier, deals are rarely made on the first meeting. They're made after the third or fourth, when everyone's had time to watch how you move under different lights. He's still cautious. Not every hand extended is worth shaking, and Kevin has seen how one bad introduction can ruin 10 good ones. But as the months pass, his circle grows quietly. The errands get more significant, the meetings more private, the stakes higher. It's no longer just about running for other people. Kevin is being positioned to stand among them. Kevin starts to understand that in Harlem, the real education isn't just about meeting people. It's about learning the codes they live by. These aren't written rules you can look up. They're passed down through gestures, silences, and the way conversations change depending on who's in the room. One evening, Victor takes Kevin to a small back table in a diner that's been around since the 60s. The waitress doesn't ask for their order. She brings coffee, 2 slices of sweet potato pie, and disappears without a word. Victor stirs his cup and says, "You keep your ears open more than your mouth. That'll keep you alive longer than a gun." Kevin nods, letting the words settle. He notices patterns everywhere. Deals rarely happen where they can be overheard. Money changes hands casually, never counted in public. If 2 men greet each other without shaking hands, something's wrong between them. And if a man doesn't look you in the eye when promising something, you're better off walking away. Lena, the salon owner, adds her own lesson when Kevin helps her carry in a delivery one rainy afternoon. "Trust isn't about who you like," she tells him, unlocking the back door. "It's about who's predictable. You can like a man all day, but if he's unpredictable, he'll burn you." Even humor has rules. Jokes are made carefully, never about someone's family, never about their losses. And if someone laughs too hard at a weak joke, it's a sign they're trying too hard to belong. Kevin files that away for later. He also learns about timing, how to enter a conversation just as it's shifting, how to exit before it turns dangerous. He watches Mr. Eddie diffuse a heated discussion outside the smoke shop by pretending to remember an old story, pulling both men into his rhythm before they can remember why they were angry. Kevin tries the technique himself one afternoon when 2 younger guys start arguing near a dice game. He steps in with a question about a mutual friend, just enough to change the subject. The tension eases, and later Big Ray tells him, "That's how you keep the peace without picking a side. These codes aren't about being the toughest or the loudest. They're about survival without constant conflict." The men who live longest in this game aren't the ones who win every fight. They're the ones who know which fights to avoid. Kevin's becoming fluent in the language, and with fluency comes invisibility. He can stand in the middle of a storm and look like part of the scenery. In Harlem, that's not just a skill. It's a kind of armor. By the late 1980s, Harlem is shifting under Kevin's feet. The music blasting from boomboxes changes tempo. Less jazz and soul, more bass-heavy beats with verses about fast money and faster consequences. Storefronts he grew up passing every day are closing, replaced by businesses that look sharper but feel colder. Some corners seem livelier than ever. Others have gone quiet, like they're holding their breath. Kevin watches as new players step into the scene. They're younger, hungrier, and not as careful as the older generation. Their cars are louder, their chains heavier, their tempers shorter. They treat Harlem like a stage, not a neighborhood with its own memory. It makes the older figures wary, and it makes Kevin pay even closer attention. One night at a block party, he notices the crowd split into pockets. On one side, the veterans, men like Mr. Eddie, stand back, talking low, eyes scanning the crowd. On the other side, the new generation throws dice, flashes cash, and poses for anyone holding a camera. Kevin moves between the 2 worlds easily, shaking hands and keeping conversations light. But he knows which side is safer when things turn. The streets are also seeing a new kind of heat. Police presence is heavier, with unmarked cars cruising slowly down avenues they used to ignore. There's talk of federal task forces and big indictments in other boroughs, whispers about names that might be next. Kevin learns that in this climate, even people who've done nothing wrong can get pulled into trouble just by being seen in the wrong place. Yet opportunity is growing too. The city's appetite for certain goods and the money they bring is at an all-time high. Friends who once worked in small circles are now moving serious weight, and the profits are rewriting the rules about what's possible. Kevin doesn't rush toward it, but he doesn't step away either. One evening, over coffee in Victor's favorite diner, Kevin hears the older man sum it up perfectly. "The neighborhood's changing its clothes, Kevin, but it's still the same body underneath. You just have to know which way it's turning before it turns on you." Kevin takes the advice seriously. He starts walking the streets differently, not in a rush, not lingering too long. Watching for patterns in who's meeting where, noticing which storefronts stay open late and which suddenly close early. In Harlem's shifting scene, information is worth as much as product, and Kevin is learning to collect it without ever looking like he's collecting anything at all. The world around him may be getting louder, faster, and riskier, but Kevin is building his position the same way he has from the start. Quietly, patiently, and always ready to adapt when the streets change their tune. Kevin's first taste of real money comes in a way that feels almost anticlimactic. No dramatic handoff in a dark alley, no tense moments with strangers sizing him up. It's a series of smooth, quiet transactions over a few weeks, each one small enough not to attract attention, but steady enough to build into something substantial. It starts when Victor asks him to manage a short-term arrangement while one of his trusted men is taking care of business out of town. Kevin's job is simple: receive, confirm, and deliver. No alterations, no improvisations. The pay is fixed, but the volume of work means the envelopes add up quickly. By the end of the month, Kevin sits on the edge of his bed late at night, peeling off rubber bands from a stack of bills he's never seen in his own hands before. He counts them twice, then a third time, not out of mistrust, but because the weight of the money feels unreal. It's enough to make changes, to turn whispers of ambition into something tangible. The first change is personal. He upgrades his wardrobe with a few new suits, all tailored to fit, nothing too loud. Then he swaps out his old sneakers for Italian leather shoes that feel like they could carry him through any room without drawing the wrong kind of eyes. But he's careful not to move too fast. Harlem watches people who change overnight, and quick transformation is an invitation for questions. Kevin keeps his apartment the same, his routines familiar. To most, he's just the same polite, well-dressed young man, moving quietly through the neighborhood. The shift in how people treat him is subtle at first. Shopkeepers linger in conversation, offering a little extra service. Men he's only nodded to before now stop to shake his hand. Even the police, when they pass, give him the kind of glance reserved for someone they can't quite place, but think they've seen somewhere important. Kevin understands now that money, when handled right, doesn't just buy things. It buys presence. It buys the ability to walk into a room and be considered before you even speak. But it also paints a small, invisible target that only certain people can see. One late night, he finds himself in Victor's diner booth again, a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. Victor glances at the cuff of Kevin's suit and says, "You're starting to look like a man people expect things from. Be ready to deliver. Every time." It's not a threat, but it's a reminder. This isn't just about making money. It's about holding the reputation that comes with it. And in Harlem, a reputation can be worth more than the cash in your pocket, or cost you far more if you lose it. With the confidence that comes from his first real earnings, Kevin begins to expand his reach. No longer just a runner or a trusted pair of hands, he's now a man who can connect supply to demand and make his own margins in the process. It starts with small territory moves. A friend from the Bronx introduces him to a contact who's looking for a reliable uptown connection. The goods are already in play. All Kevin has to do is smooth the path between two people who don't entirely trust each other. He does it with calm conversation, never overselling himself, never making promises he can't keep. When the deal goes through without a hitch, both sides remember who made it happen. From there, the network grows. Kevin recruits a couple of younger guys, not to hustle on their own, but to help manage deliveries and keep track of where product is moving. He trains them in the same quiet style he's learned. Stay low profile, don't flash, and always deliver on time. They respect him because he doesn't bark orders. He sets an example they can follow. He also starts diversifying. While most of his peers focus on a single stream of income, Kevin understands that Harlem is unpredictable. 1 week's gold mine can be next month's liability. So he builds side arrangements, clothing shipments for a boutique owner, discreet car sourcing for a contact in Jersey, even a small stake in a lounge where Victor sometimes holds meetings. The crew around him is small but solid. They know each other's families, watch each other's backs, and keep their conversations short when they're in public. Kevin insists on it, because in Harlem, the more you say, the more you give away. There's a night in late summer when Kevin stands on the roof of his building, looking out over the city lights stretching south toward Midtown. The skyline is alive, pulsing with 1,000 different hustles, and he realizes he's no longer just part of someone else's story. He's writing his own, but growth brings new eyes. Some competitors notice the way his name is starting to circulate, even in circles that used to belong exclusively to others. It's not hostility yet, but in Harlem, attention always comes with a timer. For now, though, Kevin's moves are deliberate, his steps measured. The reach is expanding, the structure is solid, and the money is steady. And as long as he keeps those three in balance, he knows he can keep climbing without tipping the board. Kevin learns early that in a business where tempers flare quickly and grudges last for years, charm can be as valuable as muscle. He's not the type to shout his way into a deal. Instead, he listens, measures the tone in the room, and finds the right words to make everyone feel they're getting what they want. Quiet negotiations become his specialty. Sometimes they happen over coffee in the back of a diner. Other times in the corner booth of a lounge where the music is loud enough to mask certain details. Kevin keeps his voice even, his posture relaxed. He never rushes to fill a silence. He lets it work for him. One meeting stands out. A supplier from Jersey comes in ready to walk away over a late payment he's convinced is intentional. The man's shoulders are tense, his voice sharp. Kevin doesn't match the energy. He lowers it, offers the man a drink, asks about his drive, and listens to the complaints without interruption. When he finally speaks, it's with a calm explanation and a clear plan to make things right. The supplier leaves with his payment, a handshake, and, more importantly, the impression that Kevin is someone worth doing business with again. This ability to smooth rough edges doesn't go unnoticed. Victor begins bringing Kevin into more delicate conversations, the kind where too much pride or the wrong word could collapse weeks of work. Sometimes, Kevin is there just to observe, to absorb the rhythm of how seasoned players diffuse tension without appearing weak. Other times, Victor lets him take the lead, watching closely, but staying silent. Kevin understands that charm isn't about being everyone's friend. It's about reading the moment, knowing when to give ground and when to stand firm, when to make a concession that costs little but earns a great deal. There's risk in it, of course. One misstep can make you look unsure, and in Harlem, hesitation is blood in the water. But Kevin's record stays clean. Deals close, disputes settle, and more people start coming to him directly instead of going through intermediaries. One night, as they leave a successful meeting, Victor tells him, "You've got a gift, kid. Most men fight to win. You make them want to shake your hand." Kevin takes the compliment for what it is, a recognition, but also a responsibility. Because the higher he climbs, the more he'll need that skill to keep both money and danger in check. Competition in Harlem is inevitable. No matter how carefully Kevin moves, there are always others watching the same corners, eyeing the same opportunities, and wondering if they can push in. The trick is to navigate those encounters without turning them into open war. Because in Harlem, wars don't just cost money, they cost years. The first serious challenge comes from a crew operating out of East Harlem. They're younger, louder, and carry themselves like they own every sidewalk they touch. One afternoon, Kevin hears from one of his runners that the crew's been trying to undercut his prices and poach a few of his quieter clients. It's not yet a threat to his operation, but it's a move meant to test him. Kevin doesn't rush in with confrontation. Instead, he chooses neutral ground, a pool hall on 125th Street, where both sides have mutual acquaintances. He arrives early, takes a table near the back, and waits. When the other crew finally shows, the atmosphere is tense enough to be felt in the air. He opens the conversation with calm questions, not about territory, but about mutual contacts, shared suppliers, and whether anyone's actually benefiting from stepping on each other's toes. By the time the first game of pool ends, the edge has softened. They agree, without paperwork, without handshakes, to stay in their own lanes for now. It's not friendship, but it's enough to prevent unnecessary heat. Kevin knows these truces are fragile. A missed payment, a misunderstanding, or even a careless word in the wrong ear can unravel them. So he keeps lines of communication open, sending occasional messages through intermediaries, making sure no one mistakes silence for hostility. Still, there are moments when tension flares. At a late-night lounge, one of the East Harlem guys makes a sideways comment about Kevin's polished act. Kevin smiles, raises his glass, and replies, "Better to polish than to rust." The line lands without malice, but it reminds everyone present that he won't be walked over. The real victory is that Kevin leaves the room that night with all his connections intact, and with a little more respect from those who doubted him. In this world, not losing is often as valuable as winning. Uptown nights have their own rhythm, slower than downtown's chaos, but no less alive. For Kevin, these nights are part business, part theater. The streets glow under flickering neon, the air thick with a mix of fried food, cigarette smoke, and perfume drifting from passing couples. Music seeps out of open club doors, sometimes a horn section, sometimes a deep bass line you feel in your chest before you even get close. Kevin moves through this world like a man who belongs. At the lounges, he sits where he can see the door and the room in a single glance. He orders good whiskey, but never drinks enough to blur his edges. Conversations are a mix of casual banter and quiet exchanges about upcoming opportunities. Who's moving where? Which blocks are heating up? And who might be making mistakes? Some nights he ends up at the rooftop gatherings, where the city sprawls in every direction under a wash of yellow streetlight and stars you can barely see. Up here, away from the noise below, people talk more freely. Deals are hinted at, alliances considered, and rivalries measured with polite smiles. Kevin listens more than he speaks, storing details for the right moment. There's a certain glamour to these nights. The expensive suits, the clink of glasses, the flash of gold jewelry under dim light. But Kevin knows it's a glamour that hides the grind. Many of the men here will be up at dawn, moving shipments or putting out fires in their operations. Behind the music and laughter, everyone's watching everyone else, weighing moves like chess players. One evening at a packed club on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, a visiting DJ from Miami is spinning, and the crowd is electric. Victor leans over to Kevin and says, "This is where reputations are made just as fast as they're broken. Remember that." Kevin takes it to heart. These nights aren't just about being seen. They're about being remembered in the right way. Never too loud, never too eager, always in control. It's a balance that keeps him in rooms where decisions are made, without becoming the topic of whispered warnings the next day. Harlem at night is both stage and trap. Kevin walks it, knowing that every handshake, every glance, every word has weight. And he's learned to make sure his always land exactly where they should. Kevin's reputation begins to crystallize in the 1990s. He's no longer just the sharply dressed young man with a good handshake. He's becoming a figure people refer to when they talk about who can get things done without the mess. Word spreads quietly. Kevin Chiles isn't just in the business. He's a gentleman about it. This reputation grows from consistency. Deliveries arrive when promised. Meetings run on time. Disputes get resolved without anyone raising their voice. Even his rivals admit, sometimes grudgingly, that he's dependable. In a world where trust is rare, Kevin is building it transaction by transaction. Part of it is image. Kevin keeps his suits pressed, shoes polished, and his car clean enough to catch reflections in the paint. But the style is never empty. It's tied to the way he conducts himself. He's polite to waitstaff, tips the valet, and greets the doorman by name. These details might seem small, but they travel through Harlem faster than rumors of a fight. One evening, Victor introduces him to a visiting investor from out of town. The man studies Kevin for a long moment before saying, "I hear you're the man to talk to when you don't want your business on the street." Kevin smiles slightly, answers, "I prefer to keep my business in the room," and leaves it at that. The investor nods, satisfied, but being seen as a gentleman in this game carries its own risks. Some mistake politeness for weakness. Kevin makes sure to correct that gently when needed. A missed payment is followed by a calm but unyielding conversation, and if someone tries to take advantage, he has ways of reminding them that respect works both ways. In Harlem's shifting underworld, reputations aren't carved in stone. They're written in wet cement, vulnerable to change if you slip. Kevin understands this. Every handshake, every late-night conversation, every decision is part of the ongoing work of holding that image. And so, the gentleman dealer persona isn't just how people see him. It's a role Kevin lives in daily. It gives him access to rooms that would close on others and shields him from the more reckless dangers of the trade. But he knows one wrong move could shatter it all, and that awareness keeps him as careful as it does confident. Crossing borough lines isn't just about travel. It's about stepping into other people's territory, where the rules are slightly different and the faces watch you harder. Kevin knows this, and when the time comes to expand beyond Harlem, he moves with deliberate caution. The first foray is into the Bronx, through an introduction arranged by a mutual contact of Victor's. The meeting takes place in a dim, narrow bar with an unmarked door, the kind of place where no one looks up unless something's wrong. Kevin arrives early, orders a club soda, and waits. When the Bronx crew arrives, he notices their approach. Two come in first, scanning the room, while a third lingers by the door. It's a subtle reminder that here, he's the visitor. The conversation is direct. They're open to collaboration, but only if Kevin can prove his side runs as clean as they've heard. He offers details without overplaying his hand, enough to show reliability, but not enough to expose the inner workings. By the end of the meeting, they've agreed to a small trial deal. A few weeks of business to test each other's word. Next is Brooklyn, a different challenge entirely. The scene there is more aggressive, faster moving, with crews who've been in play for decades. Kevin's introduction comes through Carla, the boutique owner, who has her own quiet network stretching across boroughs. The meeting happens in the back of a busy restaurant, shielded by the noise of plates and conversations. Here, Kevin's style works to his advantage. He doesn't try to match their pace. Instead, he stays steady, letting them see he's not rattled. These cross-borough relationships are delicate. Kevin understands that what works in Harlem, his slow, deliberate style, has to be adjusted slightly depending on the environment. In the Bronx, it's about showing you can be trusted in a place where everyone expects an angle. In Brooklyn, it's about standing firm without looking like you're challenging the entire room. Each successful deal widens his map. The routes become more complex, the handoffs more varied. He has to juggle not just logistics, but personalities, making sure no one feels undercut or ignored. The balancing act keeps him sharp, aware that the same reputation that opens doors can also make him a target if he stumbles. Late one night, driving back over the bridge into Manhattan, Kevin looks at the skyline and feels the weight of what he's building. Harlem will always be home base, but now his reach stretches farther. Every mile he covers is another step toward the kind of operation that doesn't just survive. It lasts. With expansion comes risk, and Kevin feels it in the air. Deals across boroughs mean more moving parts, and every moving part is another place something can go wrong. Sometimes the danger is obvious. A shipment delayed, a partner getting nervous. Other times, it's subtle. A shift in tone during a conversation, a handshake that feels just a little too quick. One rainy evening, Kevin meets a contact in a small diner near the river. The place is almost empty, just the hiss of the grill and the clink of coffee cups. The man is late, and when he finally slides into the booth, his eyes dart to the windows before he even says hello. Kevin doesn't press, but he files it away. Something's off. The conversation is short, and by the time Kevin walks back out into the rain, he's decided to slow any dealings with that side until he knows why the man was nervous. Another night in Brooklyn, he's driving home when a dark sedan starts following a little too closely. He switches lanes twice. It stays with him. Kevin takes a series of turns, ending up on a busier avenue, where the car finally peels away. Whether it was curiosity, coincidence, or something more, he doesn't assume it was harmless. Victor's advice echoes in his mind. The real threats are the ones you don't see coming, but the almost threats, they tell you where to look. Kevin takes it seriously. He starts adding more layers to his routines, changing meeting spots last minute, varying his driving routes, never keeping a predictable schedule. Even inside Harlem, he's more selective about who gets close. A younger guy, eager to work for him, shows up one afternoon with a little too much information about a rival crew's business. Kevin tells him politely but firmly to keep certain topics out of their conversations. It's not just about avoiding gossip. It's about avoiding the trap of knowing things that can't be unseen or unsaid. Every risk carries more than one kind of cost. A deal gone bad might mean lost money, but a conversation overheard in the wrong place could pull the entire operation into view. Kevin's success has come from staying low profile, and he knows that keeping it that way means treating every possible risk as if it's real until proven otherwise. Harlem is still his ground, but now the edges of his world are jagged. And as the stakes climb, Kevin understands that survival isn't just about making the right moves. It's about knowing when to stop moving entirely. By the early 90s, the quiet talk in Harlem isn't just about opportunity, it's about heat. Federal task forces are making headlines in other boroughs, and local news runs stories about big indictments with photos of men Kevin's seen at clubs, card games, or just walking down 125th Street. The law's shadow feels longer now, stretching into corners that once felt safe. Kevin notices it first in the small changes. Unmarked sedans parked too long near familiar blocks. Men in plain clothes leaning against storefronts but never going inside. A friend of a friend gets picked up, not for anything major, but for being in the wrong place during a raid. The charges stick anyway. Victor calls him one afternoon to meet at their usual diner. Over coffee, Victor leans in and says, "It's not about if they're looking. It's about how long they've been looking without you knowing. That's the part that should keep you up." Kevin nods, already aware. He starts tightening his operation. No unnecessary conversations in public. No repeated meeting spots. He insists on cleaner handoffs, sometimes layering in decoys to make patterns harder to track. Where once he might have met someone in a crowded lounge, now he chooses smaller, quieter places where he can see every entrance and exit. The whispers get louder when a mid-level figure from the Bronx, someone Kevin's done light business with, gets taken in on conspiracy charges. The man's crew dissolves almost overnight, scattering like pigeons after a car horn. Kevin reads it for what it is, a warning. He keeps moving, but slower, like a man walking through a room where he knows someone is listening. Even his personal life shifts. Fewer public nights out. More time in smaller gatherings where everyone is vetted twice. One evening, as he walks home, he catches sight of a man he's never seen before standing across the street. The man doesn't move, just watches. Kevin takes a different route without breaking stride, not looking back until he's safely inside. From his apartment window, he sees the man finally walk away, disappearing into the Harlem night. The presence of law isn't always loud, but it's always there now. Kevin understands this is the part of the game that no amount of charm or style can erase. The question isn't whether they're interested, it's how close they are to making their move. Inside Kevin's growing network, every role matters. The suppliers, the couriers, the lookouts, even the quiet investors who never touch the product but make sure the gears keep turning. All of them are pieces in a machine that can't afford to stall. The suppliers are his lifeline. Some are local, others from out of state, each with their own style. One prefers face-to-face meetings only, never phones. Another operates entirely through coded calls and drop points, trusting no one enough to meet directly. Kevin adapts to each rhythm, never forcing his own. He knows a supplier who feels respected will go the extra mile when trouble hits. Then there are the couriers. Kevin chooses them carefully. Steady hands, calm under pressure, and invisible in a crowd. A good courier doesn't just move product. They read the street, spotting shifts in mood or movement before anyone else. He trains them the same way he was trained. Keep your head down, your pace steady, and your mouth shut. The silent investors are a different challenge. They don't care about the street game. They care about numbers. For them, Kevin keeps detailed mental ledgers: who's paid in, what's been cleared, and when returns are due. These investors can be dangerous if crossed, not because they'll show up with muscle, but because they'll quietly cut off a lifeline that others depend on. The strength of this network lies in balance. If one part strains, the rest has to carry the weight until it's fixed. When a courier falls ill unexpectedly, Kevin personally handles a key delivery, making it appear seamless to the clients. When a supplier's route gets disrupted by police activity, he rearranges schedules so no one downstream feels the delay. At the center of it all, Kevin keeps himself both connected and insulated. He knows enough about each part to step in if needed, but never so much that losing one link could expose the whole chain. It's a delicate structure, and he guards it like a craftsman guarding his tools. One night, looking over the city from his apartment window, Kevin thinks about how much of this business is trust. Trust that the supplier won't cut corners, that the courier will make it through, that the investor won't panic at the first sign of trouble. In a place like Harlem, trust is rarer than money, and Kevin knows that keeping it intact is the real measure of how long his network can last. Harlem has always run on relationships, and alliances are the difference between a smooth year and a bad week. Kevin understands this better than most. While some men build their empires by overpowering others, he prefers the quieter strength of mutual benefit, where both sides have something to gain and something to lose if the deal falls apart. The alliances start close to home. He keeps a respectful line open with Lena, the salon owner, whose reach extends far beyond hair and nails. Her clientele includes wives, sisters, and girlfriends of men who move serious weight. And the conversations she overhears in her shop often contain more intelligence than any street lookout could gather. Then there's Big Ray. Though they operate in different lanes, Kevin makes sure their territories overlap without conflict. Ray controls the dice games, and in return, Kevin steers certain kinds of business away from Ray's corners. The understanding is unspoken but ironclad. Mutual respect keeps the peace better than muscle ever could. Kevin also maintains ties with smaller neighborhood crews, even if they're not directly part of his operation. Sometimes it's as simple as sending a bottle to a table at a club, or covering the tab for a birthday dinner. These gestures cost little but plant seeds of goodwill that can be cashed in later. One of the most valuable alliances he forms is with a community figure, an older man who runs a youth basketball league. On paper, it's strictly charitable. Kevin donates uniforms, helps cover travel costs for away games, but the relationship serves a deeper purpose. The man's reputation is spotless, and his public endorsement makes it easier for Kevin to move in certain circles without raising suspicion. These alliances aren't built overnight. They're layered with years of shared favors, careful introductions, and never putting someone in a position that makes them look bad. Kevin knows that breaking trust in Harlem is like shattering glass. It can be patched, but the cracks will always show. Late one evening, while leaving a quiet meeting at a social club, Victor remarks, "You've got more friends than enemies, Kevin. Keep it that way. It's cheaper." Kevin smiles at the truth in it. In this business, power doesn't always come from how much you hold. It comes from how many people would rather stand next to you than against you. Kevin's public image is as carefully managed as his business. In the eyes of most neighbors, he's not a hustler. He's a young Harlem businessman who dresses well, speaks respectfully, and supports the community in quiet ways. That perception doesn't happen by accident. He's selective about where he's seen. In the mornings, it might be at the corner cafe. reading the paper with a coffee while greeting passers-by by name. In the afternoons, he could be spotted stepping out of a tailor's shop or attending a ribbon cutting for a local business. He never lingers anywhere that might tie him too closely to street-level activity. His conversations in public are always measured. If someone approaches him on the sidewalk, the exchange is warm but brief, often ending with, "We'll talk later," before moving on. He avoids the kind of long, animated discussions that draw attention from people watching from windows or across the street. Kevin also makes sure his name circulates in the right circles, sponsoring a block cleanup, donating to the youth league, picking up the tab for a neighborhood cookout. These gestures feed the narrative that he's invested in Harlem's well-being. People talk about those things far louder than they talk about speculation. Even the police, when they pass, see a man who appears to live clean. A late model car, spotless records, polite answers to casual questions. Nothing to make them linger too long. Kevin knows that as long as his public image stays clean, any rumors about him remain just that. Rumors. One evening, at a charity dinner in a small banquet hall, a local reporter snaps a photo of Kevin shaking hands with a councilman. The picture runs in a community paper the following week under the headline, "Local Entrepreneur Supports Youth Initiatives." Kevin cuts the article out and keeps it in a drawer, not for vanity, but as a reminder that perception is a kind of currency. In Harlem, how you're seen often matters as much as what you're actually doing. Kevin's mastery is making sure the version people see is the one that keeps doors open, not closed. Close calls are part of the business, but Kevin's learned that how you handle them often matters more than whether you escape them. Each one leaves a mark, not always visible, but enough to remind him that the line between control and chaos is thinner than it looks. One afternoon, a delivery scheduled for late evening gets pushed forward unexpectedly. Kevin's man shows up at the drop point only to find two uniformed officers parked right across the street. Instead of forcing the move, Kevin calls it off instantly. No questions, no panic. They reschedule for another location hours later, and the product moves without incident. The client is impressed, not just that the deal still happens, but that Kevin won't risk making a sloppy play. Another time, while leaving a lounge after midnight, Kevin notices a car idling half a block behind him, matching his turns for 3 streets. He pulls into a well-lit gas station, walks inside, and chats casually with the clerk for 10 minutes. When he steps back out, the car is gone. Whether it was law, rivals, or just coincidence, Kevin treats it the same. Adjust the routes, switch up the patterns, and make sure no one gets too comfortable. Then there's the night a new courier nearly blows a handoff by showing up at the wrong entrance to a building. Kevin happens to be nearby, intercepts him, and redirects without drawing attention. Later, in a quiet talk, he explains exactly why even small mistakes can ripple out into big problems. The courier listens, eyes wide, and never slips again. Victor once told him, "The smartest men I know are the ones you've never heard of, because they knew when to disappear for a minute." Kevin keeps that in mind. Every close call is a reminder that survival isn't just about luck. It's about making the decision that leaves you with another day to operate. Walking through Harlem at night, Kevin sometimes passes the spots where things almost went wrong, corners where he turned back, alleys he decided not to take. To anyone else, they're just pieces of the neighborhood. To him, they're landmarks in the invisible map of how he stayed in the game this long. The trade itself is changing. Kevin sees it in the product, the prices, and the pace. What once moved in measured cycles now seems to shift weekly. New suppliers bring in different quality, sometimes better, sometimes risky. Demand spikes and dips with no warning. And the faces, so many new faces, change faster than he can learn their names. Some of the newcomers treat the work like a sprint, moving large quantities fast, burning through contacts, and disappearing when the heat comes. Others arrive with more ambition than discipline, chasing the biggest score without building the foundation to hold it. Kevin watches quietly, knowing that in this game, fast isn't always lasting. Technology is also creeping into the picture. Beepers have become standard, and certain crews are experimenting with coded numeric messages. Kevin adopts it reluctantly. He prefers face-to-face for sensitive matters, but he recognizes that the streets are learning new ways to communicate. Still, he sets limits. No full addresses, no product details, nothing that could read wrong in the hands of someone else. The shift isn't just in methods, it's in mentality. Where older operators once valued keeping things contained, some of the younger players seem eager to flash what they have. New cars, bigger chains, louder nights out. It draws attention, and attention draws problems. Kevin keeps to his own lane, but he knows these changes ripple outward. More flash means more eyes, and more eyes mean everyone has to move sharper. One evening, at a private back room in a Harlem lounge, Victor remarks, "The game's not getting harder, it's getting faster, and most of these kids don't know the difference." Kevin nods, thinking about the balance he's worked to maintain. Speed can make you rich, but control is what keeps you standing. He starts making adjustments, slightly smaller loads, more frequent but quieter drops, and a tighter roster of people who touch the work directly. In an era where too much is changing too quickly, Kevin doubles down on consistency. Harlem may be in flux, but the rules he's learned still apply. Move smart, stay steady, and let the chaos burn out around you. Loss has a way of changing a man's pace, even in a business built on momentum. For Kevin, it comes in the form of 2 hits close to home, one personal, one professional, and neither leaves him the same. The personal loss strikes first. A childhood friend, someone Kevin knew from the same school hallways and summer basketball courts, is killed in a dispute that wasn't even his own. Wrong place, wrong time, a bullet meant for someone else. Kevin attends the funeral quietly, dressed in a dark suit, standing toward the back. The grief is heavy, but so is the realization that even those who steer clear of the mess can be pulled into it without warning. The professional loss follows months later, when a trusted contact in the Bronx is picked up in a sweep. The man doesn't talk, but his absence unravels certain routes Kevin has relied on. Rebuilding them isn't just about finding replacements. It's about re-establishing trust, which can take years in this world. These losses force Kevin to slow down and reevaluate. He spends more time alone, mapping out his network on paper late at night, crossing out weak links, circling the parts that need reinforcement. It's not paranoia. It's preparation. Harlem has taught him that the only thing worse than losing someone is being unprepared for what comes after. He also starts to notice the toll these moments take on others. Victor grows quieter, less willing to linger at social spots. Lena seems more guarded, her once effortless laugh reserved for rare moments. The circle tightens, not from mistrust of each other, but from an awareness that the window for mistakes has narrowed. One evening, walking back from a meeting, Kevin passes the corner where he and his late friend used to hang out as teenagers. The stoop is empty now, just shadows against the brick. He pauses for a moment, letting the memory sit, before moving on without looking back. Loss hasn't made him softer, it's made him sharper. but it's also added a weight to his steps, a constant reminder that every move counts, because every move could be the one you don't get to make again. The thought of stepping away comes to Kevin in quiet moments, late nights on his balcony with the city lights blinking back at him, or early mornings when Harlem is still half asleep. By now, he's built something solid, with money flowing and respect in multiple boroughs. But he's also seen enough to know that the game doesn't let many men leave on their own terms. The pull to exit comes from more than just caution. The risks have grown heavier, and the rewards don't shine the way they used to. Friends have fallen, routes have been burned, and the law's attention feels closer with each passing month. At the same time, he's tasted the comfort of a life that doesn't require watching every doorway before you walk in. The question is whether that life can be his without everything he's built unraveling. Victor senses the shift. One evening over dinner, he says, "There's a moment in this business when you either double down or walk away. The trick is knowing which moment is yours." Kevin doesn't answer right away, but he carries the words with him. He starts experimenting with distance, letting his crew handle more without his direct presence, taking smaller personal stakes in certain moves, focusing more on legitimate ventures like the lounge and the boutique connections. Each step is a test. Can the machine run without him holding every gear in place? The temptation to expand is still there. New opportunities cross his desk, bigger loads, bigger payouts, but Kevin weighs each one like it's a potential trap. Sometimes he turns them down outright, earning puzzled looks from associates who don't see the whole picture. He also begins having quiet conversations with people outside the life: real estate contacts, business owners, community figures with clean books and long memories. He doesn't promise anything, but he's laying groundwork, just in case. Still, the exit path is narrow. One wrong step, and what was supposed to be a clean break could turn into the kind of ending he spent years avoiding. The decision isn't made yet, but Kevin knows he's closer than ever to choosing. And once he does, there's no coming back. The turning point doesn't arrive with a bang. It comes like a slow tide, rising quietly until Kevin realizes the ground beneath him has changed. It begins with a string of small disruptions: a missed delivery from a normally punctual supplier, a courier who swears he's being followed, a conversation in a lounge that stops the moment Kevin steps into the room. Individually, these moments could be dismissed. Together, they form a pattern. Something is shifting, and not in his favor. One evening, Victor calls him to a private booth in the back of their usual diner. The older man's expression is sharper than usual. "Somebody's asking too many questions about you," he says, low and direct. Not the usual kind either. These are people who don't care about buying anything. They just want to know where you are and who you talk to. Kevin listens without interrupting. He knows that in their world, information is often the first weapon drawn. If someone's mapping his movements, it's not curiosity. It's preparation. Over the next week, he changes everything: routes, meeting spots, even the order of his day. He calls in favors from a few quiet watchers, people who can keep an eye on certain corners without being noticed. He also begins personally handling some conversations he'd normally delegate, making sure nothing gets lost or twisted in translation. Then comes the night that cements it. Leaving a discreet meeting in Brooklyn, Kevin spots a man leaning against a lamppost across the street. He's not familiar, but he's not pretending to be anything other than what he is: someone waiting. Their eyes meet for a fraction of a second before Kevin turns and walks the other way, his pace steady. That night, in the silence of his apartment. Kevin understands that he's standing on the thin edge between control and exposure. The game hasn't turned on him yet, but the board is shifting. If he keeps moving as he has, he risks walking straight into someone else's move. It's no longer about whether to expand or pull back. It's about survival. And in Harlem, survival has always gone to those who can feel the turn before it happens and step aside in time. The signs that law enforcement is closing in are never obvious at first. They build like a slow drumbeat in the background. Kevin notices more unmarked sedans drifting through familiar streets, parked just far enough away to be ignored, but close enough to see who comes and goes. Faces he doesn't recognize start appearing at places he frequents, always in pairs, always watching more than they're talking. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. He's seen this before with other men whose names eventually ended up in court transcripts. The difference now is that the rhythm feels like it's syncing to his own movements. A courier tells him about two men in plain clothes asking questions at a bodega near one of Kevin's drop points. They didn't buy anything, just loitered, showing a photo of someone Kevin knows and writing in small notepads. Kevin responds by moving the operation's key exchanges farther from familiar spots and rotating couriers more frequently. Even casual interactions shift. At a community event, a man introduces himself as a local journalist working on a business profile of Harlem entrepreneurs. He's friendly, too friendly, and his questions slide from general to specific with practiced ease. Kevin sidesteps politely, offering vague answers and no real openings. Victor calls it out one night over a late dinner. "They've got your name in a folder somewhere," he says, matter of fact. Doesn't mean they can use it yet. But folders fill up, Kevin. They always do. The pressure is subtle but constant. Kevin finds himself rehearsing conversations in his head before making calls, considering what each word might sound like if repeated in a courtroom. He limits his movements, sometimes skipping meetings entirely if the setup feels wrong. One evening, as he's leaving his apartment, he spots a sedan parked across the street with the engine running. The driver's face is obscured, but Kevin doesn't need to see it to understand. He turns, locks his door again, and decides whatever business he had that night can wait. The tightening net doesn't make him panic. It makes him precise. Every decision is measured twice. Every contact is weighed for risk. He knows the game is changing, and this stage isn't about profit anymore. It's about keeping his name off the next set of headlines. When pressure builds, some men fold, others lash out. Kevin does neither. He starts making final plays, each one calculated to either secure his position or give him the room to disappear if things turn. The first move is financial. He channels more money into legitimate fronts, the lounge, the boutique, even a small real estate partnership he's been quietly cultivating. These businesses have always been part of his cover, but now they're becoming lifeboats. If the other ship sinks, he wants something that still floats. The second move is about people. He trims his circle, keeping only the most trusted close. Some are cut gently, assigned to work that takes them far from him, while others are phased out without explanation. Kevin doesn't enjoy it, but he knows the fewer people tied directly to him, the fewer threads can be pulled if someone starts unraveling the fabric. One night, he calls Victor to the rooftop of his building. The city spreads out below them, neon bleeding into the dark. "I'm not looking to run," Kevin says, "but I'm not about to stand still and wait for someone else to make the next move." Victor nods, understanding without argument. His third move is in the streets themselves. Kevin begins shifting routes and schedules in ways that make it harder for anyone watching to predict where he'll be. Meetings are canceled last minute, deliveries rerouted, public appearances kept short. It's not retreat, it's misdirection, and yet there's still business to finish. A deal in the Bronx that's been in motion for months needs to close. A Brooklyn contact is pressing for one last collaboration before the year ends. Kevin handles them both with the same steady hand as always, but in his mind, each is a final chapter, not the start of a new one. Late one evening, walking alone down a quiet Harlem block, Kevin catches his reflection in a shop window. The suit, the steady stride, the calm expression. They all look the same as they have for years. But he knows the man in that glass is playing a different game now, one that's no longer about winning, only about walking away with the board still in his hands. The fall doesn't come with a dramatic raid in the middle of the night. It comes through a chain of moments so ordinary they almost seem harmless, until they're not. It begins with a meeting in the Bronx, one Kevin nearly cancels because the setup feels rushed. He goes anyway, telling himself it's routine. The deal itself runs smooth, but later that week, he hears a whisper from a friendly source. Someone in the room had been under quiet surveillance for months. Soon after, 2 of his couriers are stopped in unrelated traffic pulls. Both are released without charges, but the questions they were asked, specific, informed, tell Kevin all he needs to know. The net isn't just tightening. It's already wrapped around certain points in his network. Victor tries to reassure him. They've been circling for a while, Kevin. Doesn't mean they can land it. But Kevin hears the change in his mentor's tone. Less certainty, more caution. The real turn comes on an unremarkable afternoon. Kevin is leaving a small cafe when 2 plainclothes officers approach. Their manner is calm, professional, almost polite. One shows a badge, the other a folded document. "We'd like you to come with us," the taller one says. Kevin doesn't run. Running is for people caught off guard, and he's been expecting this in some form. He steps into the unmarked car, hands steady, eyes forward. The charges are a mix: conspiracy, distribution, financial structuring. Some of it is built on real events, some on stretched connections. In the holding cell, Kevin sits quietly, replaying the last year in his head, tracing the threads to see which one snapped first. Word travels fast in Harlem. By the time the papers print his name, the neighborhood has already chosen its version of the story. Some say he got sloppy, others that he was set up. A few insist he'll beat it, that he's too smart to go down for good. For Kevin, the noise doesn't matter now. The game has shifted off the streets and into rooms with judges, lawyers, and paper evidence. Whether he walks out soon or not at all, one era has ended. Sitting in the quiet of a small cell, Kevin has more time to think than he's had in years. The constant movement of the street, the deals, the calls, the watchful glances over his shoulder, is replaced by the slow rhythm of routine. Mornings marked by the clank of doors, afternoons by the muffled hum of distant conversation. He reflects on the long arc that brought him here. The boy who once studied Harlem's sidewalks like a map, the young man who learned to dress like the future he wanted, the gentleman dealer who kept his word and built an operation without unnecessary noise. He can trace each step, each decision, each turn in the road. Some he'd make again, others he admits were mistakes even at the time. Letters arrive from the outside, family, a few loyal friends, even a note from Lena with a short message. still standing with you. Victor visits when he can, their conversations less about the case and more about life beyond it. They'll write whatever story they want, Victor tells him. But the people who know you will remember the truth. Kevin's mind drifts often to Harlem. He imagines the glow of neon on wet pavement, the muted laughter spilling out of a late-night club, the scent of fried food drifting from corner kitchens. He wonders how many faces have changed since he last walked those streets. How many new players have stepped into the lanes he once kept steady. There's no self-pity in his reflection, only clarity. The game gave him more than it took for many years, but in the end, it always takes. He sees now that survival isn't just about avoiding the fall. It's about knowing when to step away before it comes. If freedom comes, Kevin knows he won't return to the old patterns. The pull of Harlem will always be there, but so will the lessons about trust, patience, and the cost of standing too long in the same light. Somewhere beyond these walls, the city moves on. And whether Kevin is there to walk it again or not, the streets will carry his name in the quiet way Harlem remembers its own. And now, as the night settles deeper, we can let the noise fade. The neon signs of Harlem dim in the mind's eye, their flicker replaced by the steady glow of a single street lamp on a quiet corner. The footsteps that once hurried along those blocks slow to an unhurried stroll, carrying nothing urgent, only the weight of memory. Kevin's story lingers here, not in the rush of deals or the whisper of danger, but in the stillness that comes after. The streets that shaped him now hum at a distance, their pulse softened to a gentle rhythm, like the sound of rain against a window far from the storm. You might picture him now, older, wiser, walking down a calm street with no need to glance over his shoulder, the cool night air lifting his collar, each step lighter than the one before. The city still holds its secrets, but none of them press on him anymore, so we let our breathing slow, matching the pace of that imagined walk. The world outside your own walls can wait. For now, there is only this moment, this stillness. Somewhere, a door closes quietly, and the echo fades. The night folds around you, safe and soft, and whatever story you've carried with you here can rest for a while.